All right, welcome. Oh, that's very much louder than I thought it would be. Welcome to today's Tiger Bay Club. I'm so excited to be here. I am Christy Haley. I am replacing Xtavia today. She is on vacation, much deserved. First of all, I want to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And actually, Xtavia's son Edward is here to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, now I'd like to recognize all veterans or active duty members that are in our audience. If you could please stand. Thank you so much for your service. We would also like to recognize any of our elected officials. If we have any elected officials, if you could also please stand and be recognized. I see our local representatives did not stand. But I'm sure they're relaxing a little bit before some hard questions. If y'all could all please silence your cell phones. Today's topic is the legislative update for 2023. Our speakers today are Representative Tommy Gregory, Representative William Robinson, and Representative Mike Beltran, who will be joining us in just a few minutes. He was caught up in traffic today. So each of our representatives are given 6 minutes to give an introduction and go over a little bit about what they did this year on the legislature. So, welcome. Give him a hand. He's standing. There we go. There we go. All right, so Representative Gregory, if you'd like to join us first, you have 6 minutes. They're going to stay seated unless anyone has a problem hearing or seeing them. I think we did another event like this and it worked out great. So they're going to stay seated. You have the floor.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation to be here, and thank you for attending and participating in this great form of government that we have here in the state of Florida and in this country. You know, I've been thinking about that more and more. Now I'm in my 5th year in the legislature, and you go to events, and of course I see a lot of the same faces, which means that you're sacrificing and participating the most frequently. But we see new faces here, and I see some new faces today. So welcome. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm glad you're here. I hope you really do have tough questions. I like the easy questions too. I'd love to hear those. But any questions you have, we're here to serve you, just like when we go to Tallahassee, we're there to serve you. After redistricting, as we entered into our 5th year, the maps and the lines changed a little bit, but the bottom line is we each represent almost 180,000 people in our district, and then of course all of your representatives and state senators truly represent the entire state of Florida when we're there, and we take that very seriously. You know, my first 4 years in the legislature, I focused on one thing that is universal in its application and its usefulness in the state of Florida, and that's infrastructure. And I continue to do that going into my 5th year here. So if you look back over my legislative history, you'll always see me filing projects, whether they are policy or for dollars. The appropriations request to work with Manatee County and previously Sarasota County, and again across the state, because infrastructure, especially as we look at our east-west corridors, impact more than just our local community. The good news is we're bringing home more money than ever before for infrastructure projects. The bad news is we need more, and the more we build, the more they come, right? So people are continuing to move here because they want to live here in Manatee County, especially out east, because out west is pretty full already, although that's a dream for many people to come here and live on the beach in Manatee County. So I think we're very fortunate to live here. I feel very, very fortunate and very blessed to represent you. I often get asked, what do you think about the job? You like it? You like serving? Especially people that are thinking about running. And you know, thank God we have term limits in Florida, right? For all kinds of reasons. I'm a big supporter of term limits, but also it means we can't serve any longer than 8 years. 8 years is going to be a long time to serve in the Florida House. But when I get that question, what do you think? What's it like? I say, well, it's like any job I've ever had. Sometimes I love it, and sometimes I hate it, right? I mean, that's the reality of politics, and it's probably the same reality for you, no matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat or, no party affiliation. Sometimes you probably love what you hear, in which case you might not have a question on it. Sometimes you hate it, and then you're definitely going to have a question on it today. But it's probably the same for your jobs, too. I would say that's the same for us, but I do want to note, as I sit up here with my good friends, Will Robinson and Mike Beltran, we all came in together. So we are especially good friends and colleagues in the Florida House. We work on a lot of projects together. We are all lawyers. We do different kinds of law, but we're all practicing attorneys. Now, don't think that all members of the legislature are attorneys. About a third of us are. It just so happens that all of your reps for Manatee County are. And so we all do a lot of work together in the Judiciary Committee, which is where I serve as chairman of the Judiciary, and I work in appropriations as well. And I'll let Will and Mike talk about what they do. But I really just want to say I'm back. This is my 5th year in service. It's still a pleasure to serve, even on the days that I don't like the job. I still love serving in the community and serving you as members of the community. I look forward to your questions today. And with that, I'll pass it off to my good friend, Will.
Yeah. Applaud for Tommy, and it really is a pleasure to come back to Tiger Bay. But every time I come here, something happens in the sense of I'm a little under the weather right now. I went on a cruise. Don't worry, it wasn't a Disney cruise. The mouse didn't poison me. I'm sure we'll talk about Disney. But came back with a little bit of a cold. I think 2 years ago I had spine surgery during Tiger Bay, and I think you handled the entire event by yourself. But it's always a pleasure. As Tommy mentioned, we used to be part of the Sarasota County legislative delegation, so I had a great time going to the Sarasota Tiger Bay as well. We would do both. So it's great to reconnect with you all and frankly hear what your concerns are and what your tough questions may be. But let me catch you up a little bit. I'm sure we all know about this, but let me catch you up from last Tiger Bay. We had a small thing in 2022 called an election. And that election produced enormous supermajorities for the Republican Party. We have the most sitting Republican House members in the history of the state of Florida. The same with the Senate. The governor won by 19 points, which was an historical victory, winning in some areas that a Republican hadn't won in years. Osceola County, Palm Beach County, Miami-Dade. And frankly, took a lot of that popularity along with the legislature, and we had one of the most robust sessions we've had in the history of the Florida legislature. In some senses, it was fairly tame. We always have an abortion bill. In my 5 years, we've had an abortion bill every time. We always have an immigration bill. We always have a funding bill. But certainly a lot of those bills garnered some extra attention because they were enormously policy-driven. And we're going to talk a lot about those bills, but don't forget about some of the other bills. Tommy was a bit bashful, but he helped shepherd one of the most important tort reform bill packages in the history of the state of Florida. Very, very good tort reform package. We cut taxes this year, the most tax cut in the history of the state of Florida passed this session. School choice, the most comprehensive school choice package in the history of the state of Florida. Affordable housing, the most important and comprehensive affordable housing packages in the history of the state of Florida. A number of really big policy bills that were passed and signed into law by the governor. Some sessions, we come back and forth on weekends during that 60 days. This year, we didn't do a lot of that. We were working a lot on these bills. This was not a one-page bill session. Many of these bills were very comprehensive. As lawyers, we like to read all the bills, and I do read all the bills. And to go through them and some of the complexities that they have was a challenge. But I think that it was a session that we are all proud of, and certainly would like to hear what you liked or disliked. For me personally, it was my most productive legislative session. I have 7 bills that were passed, I believe 5 that have been signed by the governor. One has not been given to the governor. One still has yet to be given to the governor. For me, I've always focused not only on infrastructure like Representative Gregory, but access to our public parks. With my family's legacy with the Robinson Preserve, it's very important that we all have the public's right to access our public parks and certainly our public beaches. And certainly the little bit of a feud I've had with the Holmes Beach mayor with regard to beach parking is very important. And that was a bill that frankly passed unanimously. And I'm hoping the governor signs that bill into law because it protects all of our right, in my view, to access public parking. Parking should not just be for those that are rich or can live on the island or can afford a vacation rental, but it should be something that all of us can enjoy because frankly, our taxpayer money goes to fund that beach. And Senator Boyd and I are still working with our island city partners to continue the dialogue. But for me, that was a very important point in our session, along with some other important things. But once again, just a pleasure to represent you. Like Representative Gregory said, we are in our third term, so you can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, God willing, if we win one more election. We only got 3 more sessions left. Yeah, if we lose, you're done. I'll go back to practicing law. But I just really do love serving you all. This is my home community. I was born in the hospital a couple blocks from here. And so it's just a pleasure to represent you all. And thank you for all your letters and emails that you send to my office. Believe me, those are important. And let's have a great conversation today.
Thank you all for coming out. My name is Mike Beltran. I represent South Hillsborough and North Manatee. So my entire district is going to be north of the Manatee River, but it's still a pleasure to come down here and see you all. I'd say it's nice to be back, but I actually haven't been here before. My district kind of got reconfigured in the last, not this session we just did, but the one before that. So I'm new to representing Manatee County, although I've met a lot of you in other venues before, recognize a lot of faces in the audience. Anyways, I don't really know what the question is, so I'm just going to talk for a couple of minutes. I think it's just kind of intro and general thoughts about the session. But we did do a large volume of things. The legislation was more voluminous than it's ever been. A lot of things were done. We mentioned some of the things that were done. We have the most Republicans in the legislature. I'm not sure that we have the most conservatives that we've ever had in the legislature. And, whether anyone cares, I mean, I'm a conservative. I make no apology for that. But maybe that's not of a concern to a lot of people. But there's a fundamental difference between being a Republican and being a conservative. And the difference comes down to things like fiscal austerity. Like we did do a tax cut, but the tax cut was piecemeal. Like we need to be repealing taxes. We have the largest budget surpluses ever. We've reserved for the past 3 years, and rightly so. So we have the reserves if we get hit by a hurricane, we have a recession, there's some other macroeconomic thing that hits Florida. We are in very good condition. Why do we continue to tax people, including and especially working class people in my district? Why are we continuing to tax people? Why is the sales tax? Why is the sales tax so high if we have all these budget surpluses? When I was elected in the legislature, and the budget was about $89 billion. The budget that we passed was $117 billion. I very nearly voted against it. If it had been a nickel more, I would have voted against that budget. The budget has grown. Now, is it New York? No, like New York spends twice per capita at the state level that we do. But so we are not as bad as other states. But let's not kid ourselves and say that we're being perfect fiscal conservatives. Has there been inflation? Yes. Has it been 25% inflation? No. This is not Argentina. We're not in Zimbabwe. We need to take a look, and we need to cut the taxes. I mean, yes, people are moving to Florida. Yes, our economy's booming. Property values are up. Things are going fairly well. The inflation is hurting, but we need to do across the board sales tax cuts. We need to look at property taxes. I mean, do you know if I wanted to go after this meeting, I want to go and pop a kayak in the Manatee River and go fishing. I need to go get some license from the state. Why do you need to collect a license for me to go fishing in the river? Why is that necessary? Why are we charging? If you go to a state park, you got to pay $2. You got to stop at the toll booth and pay $2. They're going to pay the guy $15 an hour to collect your $2. I mean, it's absolutely absurd, the number of taxes and fees that we charge. And we've done a lot of things. We have rolled back in at least 3 major areas. We have rolled back consumer protection. We have rolled back consumer protection. It's because we have created. I mean, when you have a supermajority, you strip out checks and balances. You strip out checks and balances. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. You strip out checks and balances when you have a supermajority. Like having a supermajority, like if we're going to be conservatives and do the things that we said, like we're not even. I'll be honest with you, and I don't. There's people of all sorts of values. This isn't, some Republican club like that I talk to on my circuit. I realize this is a mixed audience, and rightly so. I'm happy to be here, but when we have stripped out consumer protections. I think that's a big problem. When we don't have meaningful checks and balances anymore. Yes, we're over 2/3. We're very nearly 70% of the legislature, and does that really create good government? Does that really create good government? And then when we ran on a conservative platform. Yes, there was a landslide. DeSantis won by 19 points. I think I won by 26, okay? Yes, we had a landslide because we said we were going to do certain things. Individual liberty, separation of powers, limited government, low taxes. We also said that we were going to do things that probably don't appeal to everyone. We said we're going to ban abortion. We said that we're going to protect the Second Amendment, and we've done half measures on those. We haven't even actually done the conservative things that we said we were going to do. We didn't run that we were going to strip out consumer protection. We didn't put that on a mailer. Nobody puts that on a mailer, but that's exactly what we've done. We've made it easier for telemarketers to solicit you. We've reduced your remedies if an insurance company doesn't want to pay a claim, not just in the problem areas of roofing or auto glass or things where there were legitimate problems. And life insurance. Theoretically, a life insurance company doesn't
I
have
hate to
pay.
interrupt, but
Yeah,
30
sure.
seconds.
Okay, sure, yeah. And then in home builders, there's one more. In home builders now only have to build a home that stays together for 7 years. You have your mortgage for 30 years. The home builder, they build a house, the house falls apart in year 8, you pay your mortgage for another 22 years, you can't sue the home builder. So I'll leave it there. I know I went on a little bit of a rant. I apologize for that, but.
Let's give him a hand.
So I was the chair of civil justice, and Mike was on the subcommittee. I feel like
None of this is any criticism.
No, this is great. I feel like I'm back in civil justice land right now. Mike. No. This is why we have Tiger Ray. Not all Republicans, by the way, agree on everything, but I feel like I'm back in civil justice with some of our debates. Aren't we?
All right, it is time for audience questions. Remember, to ask a question, you must be a member of Tiger Bay. If you want to become a member, please come see one of the board members sitting over at that table, and they'll be happy to take your money to become a member. You will have 30 seconds to ask your question. Please keep it focused on a question, and give us your name, your member, and then state your question and to which speaker you would like your question directed to. So I'm going to start because Octavia sent me a fabulous question. We'll start with Representative Robinson. If you had to give yourself a grade, what would it be and why? And are you proud of what the Florida legislature has done this year? And that's to all of you.
Well, my grade would be incomplete because the governor hasn't had a chance to sign, hopefully, all of my bills. But for me, it was a successful legislative session. I hate to grade it, but I think we did pretty well, and certainly I'm very proud of the committee work that we did. We did some great work under Chair Gregory's leadership. And for me, the overall legislative process, to me, I think while every session we could have done more, and I think that's the great thing about having a fixed 60-day session, unlike the federal system, it goes on and on and on. I think this legislative session was the most robust, so I would give it an A for what we accomplished. It was by far the most transformational session that probably I will ever see in the legislature.
One of the generals I worked for in the Air Force, would close most of his meetings, and when he would give me feedback, you get feedback in the midterm, right, before you get your enlisted performance report or officer performance report. Every year in the military, you get one of those, and It's very effective at giving you feedback in the middle of, at 6-month point and then at the year. And I remember very clearly, it didn't matter how well I did. He would always say, that's nice, that's what you've done, but keep attacking. Keep attacking. Don't rest with where you are. And I adopted that mentality in life. I don't think we should ever be satisfied. That's why I love when Mike started going off on he got a little excited over there talking about all the things we haven't done. That's right. That's the right attitude. Whatever it is you want to accomplish in the legislature or in life, you do have to keep attacking, or it isn't going to get done. So I was thrilled to hear Mike go in that direction. And I think, like Will, if I was going to give myself a grade, I'll be less bashful and say I would give myself an A-. And I would say a minus because there's always more to do. There's always a little bit more we could have done. I do have to keep attacking. There's some other things that I wanted to get done that I didn't get done. But I think overall, what all three of us did at the table this year, as they've both indicated, was a lot. I mean, we did more. I'm just telling you, in my 5 years in the legislature, we did more this year, more. And we were working those first 4 years too. I don't mean to diminish what any of us did or what other legislators did, but I think we did more last year than we did the first 4 years, maybe combined. I mean, we just did a tremendous amount of work, and yet still, as Mike indicated, there's more work to be done, so I'd say A-. Mike, I'm not giving you the mic this time. No, you got your own. You have a mic. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let's start with the military. If I was in the military, I would be in the brig. I'd be lucky if I wasn't in front of the firing squad, okay? So if you didn't notice that from my rant a couple of minutes ago. So that's the rating. In terms of the grade, I feel like when you break your leg and don't get anything done that semester, that's kind of whatever the grade, the medical, whatever it is, that's the grade I would give myself. Because essentially, that's what happened. I opposed the tort reform bill. It was a signature bill of the speaker. I opposed the so-called Live Local Act, which is the biggest expansion of government program that I've seen during my time in the legislature. It's almost $1 billion, and I can elaborate on why that money's not targeted to really solving the problem. I opposed those things. I opposed signature things of the governor. I voted against his immigrant relocation program, not because I don't think we need to have a robust border security policy, but because people here in Manatee County shouldn't be paying to fly people from San Antonio, Texas to Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. I can't afford to go on a trip. I can't afford to go on a trip to Martha's Vineyard. Why on earth am I paying sales taxes and property taxes and taxes here in Florida to pay to transport someone who's not even supposed to be in the country, who's been bamboozled to get on that plane, and then fly them to Massachusetts? And they want me to say that that's okay? That is not okay. The money was to be relocating people from Jacksonville who are being flown in by the Biden administration out of the state, not to go and get involved in somebody else's problem. That's a federal issue. The Congress hasn't addressed it, but we need to elect a proper Congress, not go and waste our taxpayer dollars. So I opposed the governor and the speaker and the Senate president, and so they didn't move any of my bills. They did move one bill, and I did get one appropriation signed. But yeah, so they killed all my stuff because I voted my principles, and I'm not going to go along with this nonsense anymore. I voted for with the party 85% of the time, but there's no B- in Tallahassee. There's no B- in Tallahassee. It's either you do exactly what they say, or they kick you to the curb, and that's fine. And that's fine. I didn't do anything wrong, so that's why I'm not going to give myself an F letter grade, because I didn't do anything wrong. But did I get a whole lot done? No, because I was retaliated against, and that's fine. I knew I was going to be retaliated against. I looked at all my bills. I said, are there any of these bills that are so essential that it's worth compromising my core values when I'm voting on other people's bills? I said, no, I think they're going to kill them all. I was right. I was right about that. At least I got something right. But so that's the, and what was the last question? Am I proud about what happened? Do I need to answer that?
All right, we're going to audience questions. Keep in mind, you do have 30 seconds to ask your question. Make sure you state your name and who you would like your question directed to, and I will do my best to channel Xtavia's really slow blink and eye rolling if you talk too much.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Jackie Dzelski, Manatee Chamber of Commerce, and we were able to hear from our delegation just a few weeks ago addressing the business community on the successes and the work still to be done in Tallahassee. At the time, the budget wasn't finalized. Certainly there wasn't certainty, so I would ask each of you kind of successes and disappointments related to the budget now that there's certainty.
And who would you like that directed to? All of them.
So I put in, okay, so let's talk about budget stuff for a second, okay? Because this is good, okay? So the appropriation process is an absolute boondoggle. They're wasting your taxpayer dollars. People put in these appropriations projects, and then it becomes something to leverage you on policy. Okay, so you got some guy goes and files $20 million worth of appropriations. Now the governor and the speaker and the appropriations chair can all leverage you for the $20 million to keep you in line for the votes. That's number one. Number two is appropriations projects, or I'm saying that somebody in Pensacola or Miami or Ocala should be paying tax dollars to do something in my district. So it better be really good. It better be like an airport or a school or a reservoir that's going to serve multiple districts. Otherwise, it should be done at the county level. I shouldn't be asking those people to spend money in my district, and I shouldn't be having my constituents spend people in other people's district. For that reason, I don't file a lot of appropriations projects. When lobbyists come to my office, I tell them, I'll file your appropriation project, but we're going to get leverage, and I'm going to go and vote my conscience. I'm not going to go and prostitute my values to get some appropriation. So before you file with me, just think about that. And usually that's sufficient for them to walk down the hall to someone else. Okay, so I don't file a lot of appropriation. I filed one appropriation. The appropriation chair was very clever. What he did is he made sure that everyone had at least one thing in the budget. Very clever guy. So he put my thing in the budget, because I only had one thing, so I guess I'm batting 1,000% on that. It was a good project. It was educational. It was to do tech education. I mean, that's my thought on the budget. When someone goes and posts on Facebook, some of my colleagues have posted, I got $20 million for and they list all these things, and most of them are specific to their district, not something that somebody else should be spending money on. That's not like a thing that you should be bragging about. I mean, that's not a thing that you should be bragging about. Like, we should be doing generally applicable things at the state level, and then a lot of these things should be local governments, and there's a ton of waste, fraud, and abuse in this appropriations process. So I'll leave it at that. I probably went way beyond the scope of the question.
I got $20 million for my district. I'm really proud of it. You know, God bless Mike. He always tells you exactly how he feels, and actually, I think you get that from all three of us. And, you know, Mike has given you an inside look. It is true that if you allow somebody in Tallahassee to leverage you based on your appropriations, they will. Sure, somebody will do that to you. But I can tell you that none of the three of us do. You know that didn't happen to Mike. That doesn't happen for Will or myself. We'll file appropriations. We're happy that we brought back money for, as I said earlier, infrastructure. Whether we're talking about the millions, I think $4 million for Moxon Wallow Road and $9 million to extend State College of Florida, start building and planning for the campus development there in Parrish. I'm happy with those projects. They do serve multiple districts as well. But, you know, look, overall, the budget, I will say in a general sense, I've been asked this question in many forums. Do you think the governor should veto X? Whatever the project is. Generally, my answer is, I don't care. I'm a fiscal conservative. The governor, you know, I might be personally disappointed if the governor vetoes one of the projects I name or one of the other projects that I didn't name. Sure, I'd be disappointed because I wouldn't have filed it if I didn't believe in it. But I'm not going to change my vote for it. And as a fiscal conservative, you know, the year before when I think it was the year before when he did a line item veto and he took $3 billion out of the budget, or this year when he took $500 million out of the budget, I said, great. More money for reserves. And then, yes, as a fiscal conservative, back to Representative Beltran's earlier point, sure, let's cut some taxes. Once the reserves get to a certain point, we shouldn't be piling more and more money into there every year. There's got to be an amount we say, okay, that's enough. We have too much money coming in. And I almost said the word revenue, which is wrong. It's not revenue. It's your tax dollars. It's your money. It's not revenue. And so I do think that we need to keep focused on that. But I think that we had a very successful budget here locally in Manatee County. And in part, that is driven by the success of your legislators. And in part, it's due just to the sheer health of the economy of Florida.
I think I'll say this again. No process is perfect. And by the way, Mike, you do have a red button. You could vote no.
I used it.
Okay, yeah. Mine has a little squeaky noise sometimes. You know, when I press that red button, it kind of makes a little squeaky noise. No. You compare our system to the federal system. The federal system has totally abrogated its responsibility to the executive in terms of funding. So what process is better? I would submit that the Florida process is better. We are very transparent. You can amend the budget. And one of my favorite parts about the system, unlike the federal system, is first of all, we pass a budget. We can't leave until we pass a budget. And secondly, I love the fact the governor has a line item veto power because he sees the whole state. We see our own area. And I would push back a little bit, Mike. I mean, our state is, and I don't have the inflation numbers in front of us, we're growing at exponential numbers. We need those dollars for infrastructure, for schools, for water projects. Our state is just growing by leaps and bounds since COVID. We've all felt it. And we need those resources to come back up. Can we work on streamlining the budget and cutting taxes? Absolutely. No budget is perfect. But we always have to keep ahead because we never seem to conquer our road issues. And it's so incredibly important that we do. And I really like what the governor did. He fast-forwarded a bunch of road projects, a couple in our area, because we have people just coming here, 1,000 people a day. A city the size of Orlando every year. And that puts a strain on all parts of our economy. And it's important that not only from our little area that we look at the budget, but holistically, we look at the budget. I'm very, very proud of the budget that we passed this year.
Can I say one thing?
Sure, keep it short. Oh.
So just, I'll be
Okay,
very-
30 seconds
Be
each.
very brief. Will talked about the system that we have. I just want to give you one example of how we put things in our system that we think are going to improve the situation that don't. There's a 72-hour rule in the budget. You talked about amending the budget. That means you have to put the budget in its final form on the desk. You have to wait 72 hours. You can't amend it from that time, or you got to restart the clock, and then everyone has to wait 3 days. So what is the result of that? You're supposed to look at the budget. What if you find pork in the budget? Well, then you have to restart the clock, and they always do it the last week of session, so that means everyone has to stay over the weekend, so nobody does that. So really what the 72-hour rule, it allows you to scrutinize the budget, but it really just gives you 72 hours to look at all the pork that you're about to vote for that you can't change without going through a whole rigmarole. So there's a lot of things in our process that were intended, well-intended, that don't work out in process. I could give you examples all afternoon, but I'll just leave you with that.
Representative Gregory, you have 30 seconds. You're good? You sure? Okay, next question.
Hi, I'm Liv Coleman. I'm a professor of political science at the University of Tampa and a homeowner in East Manatee. And I have a question about property insurance. And this could be a question for any of you, but because I live in East Manatee and I'm represented by Representative Gregory, I'll ask him to respond. When I moved to Manatee County in 2015 and we bought our home, my monthly mortgage payment was something like $1,800 a month. My monthly mortgage payment today is about $2,800 a month. The increase is almost entirely due to insurance increases. I've been through 2 hurricanes, Irma and Ian. We've never filed a single claim, property insurance claim, but it keeps going up. Our insurance carrier left the state. I'm on Citizens now. And so I know that the legislature passed some changes related to litigation, but my understanding is the biggest driver of insurance right now is reinsurance costs are going up. And that's mostly based on things like where the concentration of the geographic concentration of policies and catastrophic storms, things that the legislature frankly hasn't addressed. Will I still be able to afford my home in 5 years? Are you going to get costs under control? What do you have planned for the next session to make homeownership affordable for middle-class families like mine?
Thank you for the question. You know, I mean, I'm going to do this, although I know I don't need to. By show of hands, how many had your insurance rates go up 25 to 50% last year, and the year before that, and the year before that, right? Well, only one thing truly drives your insurance rates to go up. There's only one thing: claims. Insurance companies and the insurance industry is one of the most heavily regulated industries, not just in the state of Florida, but in the country. They can't just raise the rates because they want to make more profit. That's not how it works. They have to go in and justify those rates to the Office of Insurance Regulation, again, heavily regulated. The thing that made your insurance rates go up so much over the last several years, and always in Florida to have a little bit higher rates in the property context, is claims. Now, claims are driven, of course, by natural storms that the state can't control. We could do things, for example, we can do things working with the utility companies to harden the utilities, right? To take all those overhead lines and put them underground. That's been tremendously successful in the state of Florida and makes it that much faster, that much less loss, right? Because those little claims add up. So when you lose power for 2 days or 3 days or God forbid 8 days or longer and all your food goes bad, then there's going to be a claim. And while you haven't had any damage, fortunately, your neighbors or other people covered by those insurance companies have had. Reinsurance is just like big banks will sometimes bundle all your mortgages together and then sell them to somebody else. Reinsurance works in much the same way. You have insurance companies that want to leverage that risk, so they'll buy reinsurance, and sometimes they're required to buy reinsurance. Well, the reinsurance market has been looking at the state of Florida for the last 20 years and said, number one, you have a lot of naturally occurring storms, so your rates are going to be higher. And the reinsurance rates, kind of the interest rate that they charge insurance companies, higher. But then the second thing that you have that drove claims is the litigation environment in Florida and some of the rules that were in place. And before you even get to the litigation, you had something called the assignment of benefits. And I think most of you have heard this example. I'll just use one. There were people abusing property insurance by literally walking door to door. You probably got a flyer in your neighborhood or a knock on your door. Somebody with a clipboard said, hey, there was a storm here 6 months ago. I can see you have bad shingles. I can get you a free roof. And you would sign a piece of paper if you agreed to that, assigning your benefits, assigning your rights under your insurance policy to that person holding the clipboard who works usually, if they're a bad actor, in conjunction with a roofing company and a law firm. Sometimes they're in-house. I'm dealing with one of them right now, helping a homeowner. The lawyer has their own law firm. The roofing company is supposedly separate. But really, that lawyer doesn't do anything in this law firm. They're really in-house counsel to that firm as well. The person that knocked on the door with the clipboard is also an employee, and they're all working together. That employee put a tarp on their roof the minute you signed and charged the homeowner, $2,500, $3,500. Well, that homeowner eventually gets the free roof, right? The so-called free roof. But all of you pay for that. Every time you saw somebody in your neighborhood get a free roof, your insurance rates went up. Now, admittedly, that's just one example, but there were a host of problems that we have tried to solve in the legislature regarding these unscrupulous actors in the property insurance market. And I can tell you that it brought stability to the reinsurance market, because prior to the last special session, prior to this session, the reinsurance market and the insurance industry in Florida said we're $6 billion short, $6 billion. So the state of Florida ponied up, I think, $1 billion the first time and $1 billion the next time. They said, okay, well, you're still $4 to $5 billion short after we injected those funds into the reinsurance market, which is not, frankly, the right use of your tax dollars to subsidize an entire industry, but we had no choice because homes would have become unaffordable. But now, after that last special session and then this general session that we just had, the reinsurance market has stabilized, and they're no longer asking us for any money in the state of Florida. So your ultimate question, will my home become unaffordable? I don't know the personal circumstances and what your insurance company, well, now it's Citizens. Now you are essentially subsidized by the state, as are millions of other Floridians, because the insurance companies left the state. So if you're disagreeing,
30 seconds.
if you're disagreeing with what we did to fix it, we had to do it, or there wouldn't have been any other insurance companies left. And I do think that you're going to see relief in the next 12 to 18 months.
Thank you. Okay, next question.
Kevin Wright, member, asking a question of all three of you on my own behalf, not any organization. Members of both parties, many of them, want to treat every election, every issue between now and November 2024 as being about Donald J. Trump. but that's both parties. The majority of the state legislature has endorsed Governor Ron DeSantis in 2024. Mike, you haven't endorsed anybody. My Senator Joe Gooders, of course, has long been held for Trump. The rest are DeSantis. Some of those folks is kind of divided between both are equally wearisome to me. Those that are never Trumpsters and those that are part of the Trump cult of personality. I think reasonable people are somewhere in between.
Okay, what is your question?
Okay, the question is given that many of you have been accused of allowing the governor to hold your legislation hostage or to twist your arm or bribing you before he'll sign those things. Senator Joe Gooders has even said that, hey, my constituents in my district are going to be hurt as retribution for endorsing Trump. What are your three thoughts on those things?
Let's try to limit this. We have a couple more questions, so about a minute apiece, if you don't mind, if you can.
I was proud to endorse the governor. Actually, I endorsed him before he asked me because I've seen what he can do for this state. I've seen how he turned his state around. Frankly, what he did during COVID, when a lot of the other governors were all about locking folks down and kids not being able to learn in person. This governor led, and I think he will be a great commander-in-chief. The other stuff doesn't bother me at all. I haven't had one conversation with the governor. I haven't had one conversation with his staff about my endorsement. I haven't had one conversation with anyone on his team about a quid pro quo. I made my endorsement based upon my principles.
Well, yeah, I'm in the same boat as well. I can tell you it's been more than 2 years since I told the governor that I'll endorse him if he runs for president. So there was no question, never discussion about it in my mind. I think he'll make a great president.
Oh, boy. I got a minute. All right. Well, let me just put it this way. If you don't have any hostages to shoot, then you don't have any hostages to shoot, right? So, I mean, that's one thing, right? So, like, was I threatened by the governor to endorse him, or if I didn't endorse him? No, because I had nothing to threaten me with. So I'll say that. I've said other things. But I'm not going to say them here. You guys got plenty for the video if you want to put this on YouTube and see what happens. But anyway, I guess, there was no explicit that I have personal knowledge of. I think other people have made the claims, and there was the timing. Well, I think what's been reported in the New York Times is true. I'll say that much. But I can't speak to it personally. Maybe at some point another time I'll share exactly what happened. But no, there was no explicit threat or quid pro quo. I mean, to be fair, there was not. I did not endorse. I guess the governor didn't call me directly. I think at least 2 people called me indirectly, and I just said, I'm not doing it now. I mean, I think I've, shared some of the frustrations and maybe even some policy differences that I've had with different people in Tallahassee. So it's early in the process. And let me say this, like, this is not like the government.
30 seconds.
The government that we are doing is not about Donald Trump. It's not about Ron DeSantis. It's not about me. It's not about my friends and colleagues up here. It's about doing you all's business. And when it's like Trump or DeSantis, this thing has been percolating for 2 years. And it's like Trump and DeSantis, and we're going to try to do this, and the governor needs this to go and run for president and do that. And it's like, is it good public policy? Are we being good stewards? Are we following the Constitution? Are we doing what's good for working class people in North Manatee, South Hillsborough County? Like, that is the litmus test. And if I win re-election or I don't win re-election, or if DeSantis or Trump or somebody from elsewhere wins, the purpose of the government is to do the people's business, not to go and advance our political careers, which I'm doing a very poor job of, I guess. But that's why, right? I mean, it's so. I mean, if you think about why you would get into politics, you get into politics. It doesn't pay well. It's very undignified. It's a horrible job. Someone asked if it's a good job. It's a horrible job. The reason you go is because you think you have something to contribute, or at least you can speak out on things, or at least you can accomplish something. It's not an end in itself to be representative or senator or president or governor. And if you're going to do that, then you're in it for the wrong reason. You could make 10 times as much money in the private sector with half the aggravation. So I think the whole dialogue is frankly bothers me every day. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, next question.
My question is for all three of you. Evelyn Almodovar, I'm a Latina member of the community. I've been a very vocal critic of the SB 1718 bill, which some of you did support. I've criticized it widely, the immigration bill. I've criticized it widely and called it, not the legislators, but the bill itself, a lazy bill, because it really solves nothing for immigration. All it's accomplished is to really demonize hardworking migrant families in our community, and it's hurting our businesses. I've heard from construction businesses, farmers, small businesses that
Okay,
people
we're
are
running
moving
out of
away.
time. What is your question?
My question is just why did you support it or not support it?
And if we could limit to 1 minute apiece, that'd be great.
Okay, that bill's a great example of most big bills that we see in Tallahassee. You have competing interest here. The competing interest is a policy on people that are trying to work, and do you want to encourage them to work or do you want to prevent them from working, right? Clearly, everything else being equal, people that want to work, you want to allow them to work. But the competing interest that you're up against is the rule of law. In my mind, it's foundational to the country. This country doesn't survive without the rule of law, and it starts with, are you allowed to enter the country or not? And if you're not allowed to enter the country, what you're really then talking about is, if you're saying a business is going to be hurt, well, they're going to be hurt because they're going to have to hire somebody else that's here lawfully, which should help all Americans, which should help all Floridians. Everybody that's here legally should be helped by that move. So it really wasn't a difficult decision in my mind. It is tough as somebody with an undergraduate degree in economics. I don't want to discourage work, but you run up against a foundational principle in the country and the rule of law, and I'd vote that way every day of the week.
This is a failure of the Biden administration. It really is. And we're here because of the failure of that administration. I would prefer this to be a national approach, to be honest with you. I think it's almost like each state trying to defend itself. And you're just not efficient doing it that way. But we can't wait on the federal government to fix this problem. And I agree with Representative Gregory. To me, it's about the rule of law. And it's illegal to work here unless you meet certain conditions. And so we have mandatory e-verify for government work, and this bill obviously made it applicable to 25 and over in the private sector, and to me it was about following the law, and that's why I supported it.
Well, I'll give you the backstory. I did address, I think, in my earlier comments, the big problem with the immigration policy the last 6 months, which is that we're wasting money on immigrant flights. So with that proviso that I'm firmly against that, I think you want me to address E-Verify. I'll give you the backstory on E-Verify. E-Verify, we passed so-called E-Verify in 2020. It was watered down to the point that it could not be recognized anymore by special interests who knowingly employ illegal labor. I'm not talking about people who come to the United States trying to earn a wage and support their family. I'm talking about big businesses who have deployed lobbyists to Tallahassee, and they essentially gutted that bill in 2020 with the acceptance of some people, or with the some people in very high up in Tallahassee were accomplices to that. It was the presiding officer in my house at the time. Okay, they watered that down. It was an exact example of the swamp in Tallahassee. It was watered down. So that was unfinished business from 3-4 years ago. I'll start off with that. The second thing is there are people from mom and pop farms all the way up to Walmart and multinational trillion-dollar companies that are knowingly employees. Somebody told me, she said, I look at the person, if they give an ID and it's facially valid and the guy doesn't say he was born in 2028, I employ that person. If I once tried to run somebody through E-Verify and it kicked out because it was a fake ID, and I know that if I run any ID that I ever get, that it's going to be a fake ID. So I'm knowingly employing illegal labor, so please don't do the E-Verify thing. Well, we need to enforce. That is the law. There are a lot of stupid laws on the books, okay? And we could go and blame Biden, but the fact of the matter is there's a whole bunch of presidents from both parties who've messed this up basically before I was born, okay? So it's a both-party thing. And we haven't solved it. The Congress needs to solve it, but in the meantime, we need to do what we can do at the state level. We did the sanctuary cities bill, rightly so, in 2019. We did this half-measured thing in 2020, and then we plugged about We plugged about 3/4 of it. It was still very well diluted by the lobbyists who all earned their retainers very well in Tallahassee this last session. But the bill, we can't knowingly allow companies to employ illegal labor, okay? Like, if we're going to have any kind of law, yes, we need guest worker programs. Yes, we need to seal the border. Yes, we need to have some kind of fair system to allow businesses to get labor for people to come in. I get that. That's essential to the economy. And the last thing I'll say is, you got to approach, like, all these things. There's other social policies that people in my party and they're approaching it from, like, we don't like people, we don't like this group, we don't like that group. That's not what this is about, okay? Whenever we're doing public policy, like, every person, whether I agree with them or we agree on policy, they're God's children. God says I have to love them, okay? So this is not anything that we're trying to go against or harm any group or anything like that. It's the question of, we're going to enforce the law, and we need to improve the law. But we also need to have a law that we're going to enforce. So I'll leave it with that.
Okay, last question.
Same question as January, but it's a little different now, talking about recreational marijuana. 22 states have passed it so far. It hasn't been dealt with at the federal level yet, but it could very well be dealt with by a constitutional amendment in Florida next year. They've almost got enough signatures. I've been talking to my Republican friends. Most of them are going to vote for it. So the question for the legislature is, are they going to get in front of this? Are they going to get in front of the constitutional amendment, or are their hands going to be tied to doing enabling legislation for the constitutional amendment? If you do the former, you'll have some say as to how it's administered. Thank you. Very interested in how you feel about it.
That's a great question. I mean, it's going to be presumably on the 2024 ballot. I don't know if they've had all the certification of signatures yet. I'd probably vote against that amendment right now. I just don't think that's good policy for Florida. Marijuana is such a tough issue. We have tried THC caps for medical marijuana. We have not been able to come together as a legislature or even a governor on this topic. So I have really no delusions of grandeur that we will pass anything meaningful before this potentially goes to referendum. And then, like with any amendment, the legislature will get involved and figure out how to implement it. And your guess is frankly as good as mine, because it aligns some interesting folks. Like my good friend Anthony Sabatini loves recreational marijuana, and he'd probably be with some of the more liberal members of the Democratic caucus. So it brings together some certain folks, more of law and order people like myself and potentially Representative Gregory, maybe Beltran as well. Just don't believe that's good policy. I don't want to speak for y'all, but good policy for our state. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, look, I've been very clear. I oppose any measure to make it easier to get marijuana, or like we had some pretty spirited exchanges. I thought the bill, and I think Rep. Robinson really did the best he could in the environment that he was in. But we have these Delta 8 things that there's a very high potency thing. The children are taking them. They're making them look like candies, and we've resolved some of that. But they're making these synthetic things that are more and more potent. I mean, they're essentially doing with cannabis or marijuana or whatever euphemism you want to call it. It's pot. It was pot when I was growing up, and that's what I call it. They're taking these things, they're combining them, and they're making, it's like fentanyl, but it's pot, okay? And it's not as bad as fentanyl, but it's getting there. These things are not good for you. Okay, it was illegal for a reason for a long time, and you say, well, there's smoking and drinking, and people do that, and look at all the problems that we have from that. We have so many problems with substance abuse, whether it's legal things, illegal things, illicit, whatever it is. We have so many problems. Do we really need to add? We need to add to that, and it's not just medical. And medical is a huge loophole. I mean, all kinds of people get the card, and it's really recreational for them. But okay, let's pretend that it's just medical now, and we'll indulge that fantasy. Now we're going to expand it even more to recreational. I mean, look, I'll leave you with this. I went to a high school, it was a science high school in New York City. I had friends who were brilliant, like the guy, the Matt Damon character in Good Will Hunting. Like, that is how smart there were two guys You know, I went, one started smoking pot in high school. He's like never had a job making, more than, very median income. Another guy, he went to Princeton. He started smoking pot at Princeton. The guy was like 10 times smarter than me. He was brilliant. He could have been billionaire banker by now. And he's been, he's not been successful. These are two guys who just blow everyone out of the water intellectually. They started smoking pot, and they were never the same. I don't even really hang out with them anymore because it's ridiculous. But it destroys a lot of lives. Maybe it's not as bad as some other substances, but I don't want to see it expanded at all. I don't think that's good for my constituents. It's not good for the kids, and it's not good for the state.
For the first time today, you have a unanimous table in front of you. I'm 100% opposed to increasing the number of any kind of recreational drugs for the state or for this country. And for me, I don't have the examples of brilliant people that I knew that use it and saw them go downhill and waste their life. But for me, I have 14 years as a prosecutor. And statistically, we're talking greater than 90% of the cases I prosecuted. The people found themselves in those circumstances because they started with something generally that was recreationally available and legal. Most of them start with alcohol. The vast majority of them went to marijuana and then something harder, or they became a victim or a criminal before they even got to the harder substances beyond marijuana. And just think of the most horrific crimes you can in your mind. I've prosecuted all of them, and the vast majority of them start with a narcotic that's frequently available legally to them. They might have been underage, but it was legally available to someone that could get it to them. So I just can't put those memories out of my mind. And I think, unfortunately, by the way, it is a very good question. Is there anything we can do to get out in front of it? We've done what we can as a legislature. We've made it more difficult to amend the Constitution in many ways, which I think is good. But unfortunately, I don't think it matters. We already have recreational marijuana in the state of Florida. Let's not kid ourselves. The medical marijuana that exists in the state of Florida and around this country is abused with regularity on, number of city blocks probably within a mile from here. We have already gone down this path. I respect my libertarian friends that they reference, and we have had some very spirited debates. I think it's the wrong decision, but I do think it's inevitable. I think they probably have the stats or the numbers to pass it, and then we'll be stuck with more bad news.
All right, I want to thank y'all so much. Do you want a 1-minute wrap-up? Well, I think we're out of time, so you might talk to them afterwards. If you'd like to do a 1-minute wrap-up?
Yeah, we'll skip
Okay.
our wrap-up if he wants to do a question. That's fine. It's up to you.
You have to go to
You're
the
mediator.
microphone? Are you a member of Tiger Bay? Yes, I am. All right. Okay, let's make it quick, though.
It'll be fast, don't
Okay.
worry. I'm not like some of my associates. Real quick.
Please state your name.
My
and
name
who
is
you-
John Colon, former State Board of Education member, former Manatee School Board member, currently Housing Commissioner. I just want to know if we're going to get all the Sadowski funds that we've been promised by the governor. That's money for affordable housing. Children cannot be educated unless they have a place to live.
That's the easiest
Thank
answer all
you.
day. Yes, that's already in the budget, 100%. Oh, that's part of the budget. You're going to get it.
I'll say this about this whole Sadowski thing. We put a documentary stamp tax. So like when you do a mortgage or you do a real estate deal, you got to pay this tax. We said we were going to spend it on affordable housing. Historically, the legislature has swept that money to use it for other things. Okay, like there were some times when we were in some tough fiscal situations and we swept the money, like during COVID, they swept the money. Maybe that was excusable. Then there's years when they swept the money. They didn't really have a reason to. But going back to the fundamental issue, we put a tax on the people of Florida. We said we were going to spend it for affordable housing. Whether I think we should be spending money on affordable housing, I think I addressed that obliquely before. But if you're going to put a tax in for something, use it for what you're going to use it for. If there's not a need or you're not going to actually spend the money, repeal the tax. That's what I think we should do. We should get rid of the stupid tax because the legislature, maybe not this year or next year, but sometime they're going to start sweeping it again. They're not even using the stupid tax for the thing that they said they were going to do. It adds transaction costs. If we're going to do affordable housing, they know how to do affordable housing because they spent $1 billion on it and not even targeted at the people who should be getting it, by the way. There's a lot of problems with that, which I don't have time to go
Okay,
into.
thank you, Representative Beltran. Let's check. Representative Gregory, would you have anything to add?
Well, you know, I thought we were ending on a unanimous note, so now I regret saying John should ask that question. Yeah, you're getting the money this year, but Rep. Beltran's also right. You never know what's going to happen in a future year, what the needs of the state of Florida are going to be, and certainly I'm in favor of reducing the size of government. You know, there is an old saying, if at least in politics, you know, we say you don't know what the question is. What, you know, somebody who mentored me when I got there say, look, I don't know what the question is, but the answer is money. And that is a kind of an unfortunate reality of politics that, and one way to solve that problem is to reduce taxes and have less money and less power at the state level, and maybe question, to your point earlier, why we're paying somebody $15 an hour to collect $2. I think we should explore that a little further. Thanks again for the invite. I know we're all available if you have further questions.
All right. Thank you so much for being here today. I want to give one more round of applause to our representatives for taking their time out of their busy schedules to be here. I also want to thank Charles Clapsaddle and his team at Manatee Education on TV. We have ABC7, all of the media that's here, and we hope to see you next month.